Alright, boys and girls, back already with the main card for UFC Fight Night Lewis versus Spivak. This is the reaction. First of all, I just want to say thanks to those who suggested I cut it down this way. It just seems much easier to film, and so yeah, I think I'm going to be doing this going forward. Alright, so the first fight on the main card was a welterweight clash between Kinoshita and Fugitt. This was a horrible one for me. Not so much because I got it wrong. That was part of it, but mostly that it was just two very average fighters, and this is a main card. It's embarrassing. I didn't have much confidence in this one when I made my predictions, despite the betting lines heavily favoring Kinoshita. But I figured he'd have enough on the feet to get this done, and I could not have been more wrong. Now, at the very start of the round, Kinoshita looked massive in there compared to Fugitt, and he managed to hit a few nice shots, but he was way too confident, and he was getting clips coming in. It was really dopey shit, and it was silly considering how much is on the line for these guys. You know, like one big loss and you're gone, you know. Now, what became obvious very, very quickly was that Fugitt was the way better wrestler, and this just ended up being the story of what was a very short and generally uneventful fight. Kinoshita did well at times to get up, but he was so easy to drag back down again, and at this level, that's just not acceptable. At one point, Kinoshita did land a really nasty head kick, and I thought, oh wow, like he's gonna go down. But Fugitt just seemed unfazed by it, like he just ate it like a savage. Then the fight went down to the ground again, and Fugitt basically beat the shit out of Kinoshita on the ground. It was a pretty easy win, and we are never going to see Kinoshita in this organization again. And again, I'm just going to say, it really surprises me how fighters with such glaring holes are able to make it this far. It's acceptable on the prelims, you do expect that, but this should not be happening on main cards, and I think with the UFC churning out so many cards every week, which I'm somewhat grateful for, there is a quality issue I'm noticing here. So anyway, Fugitt got this by TKO from ground and pound. This dropped me to 4-3, so I wasn't too thrilled at this point. Got a looming feeling that I may end this card with my first negative record of the year, which would have been a bummer, but something I was expecting. Alright, so fight 2. Okay, this brought us to Superboy Doo-Ho Choi taking on Carl Nelson. Now, my hope in this one was that Superboy had taken enough time off. I think it was something in the region of like 3 years after showing some promise. But then, you know, these were followed up by some really bad losses. So this kind of felt like the last chance for him, because let's be real, Nelson isn't going to do shit. And I managed to be both really right and really wrong in this fight. Strange fight. Choi started off looking so disinterested, like he did not want to be there, and not because he was scared or nervous, he just seemed so like didn't care about being there. He did start out with some nice leg kicks, but then this was followed up by a really massive takedown by Nelson. I did pick Choi, by the way, but we're gonna get to that. Choi generally looked composed on the ground, patient on the fence. You know, Nelson had control, but there was little action. These situations were kind of led to by a lot of mistakes that were made by Choi, who did great work to actually kind of work his way back up and get back on top. There was a nice attempted crucifix submission on the ground, which is a submission I really like. And then Choi kind of sorted out the round like inside control. He looked pretty much in control on top without doing any damage. It was interesting to see that there was a new wrinkle to Choi's game that we haven't really seen before, and that he could handle his shit on the ground, so he clearly had been working on stuff. It was a boring round, and little damage was done on either side. I would probably edge it to Choi. Now, the second round, Choi got really badly wobbled at one point. This cunt really has no chin, and this is going to be a problem for him going forward. I think Nelson has learning difficulties though. Like, if you're winning in the stand-up, why are you going for a takedown? It was just a moronic decision, and it allowed Choi to recompose himself. He then started investing in the legs, and you could see this was taking its toll towards the end of the round. Nelson looked like he was less stable in there. There was less movement. So I kind of had, this was a clear Choi round for me, and I had it as 2-0, mostly because I didn't see, even though the first round was a bit shitty, I couldn't see how you could score it for Nelson. It was a very difficult one to score for Nelson, and given the 10-9 must system, I had it 2-0 to Choi. Now this is where things went off a fucking cliff. Now Choi got dominated on the ground early on, but again managed to turn it around. Then out of nowhere, the fight suddenly gets stopped. I wasn't sure for what at first because it wasn't very clear, but it was apparently for an illegal headbutt. It looked very innocuous even in the replay, but he got docked a point for it, and I was thinking, all right, fine, whatever. Now the thing is, Choi then finished out the round on top, so the round in that case should kind of be a wash, because he got a point taken away but kind of won the round. So in my mind I'm thinking, oh, he's won the fight, he won the first two. But no, one judge did see it that way, where they gave it 29-27, which is what I had it, which would have been the first 2 rounds for Choi and then a wash in the third. But nope, somehow it gets called a draw, which means that some people obviously gave the first round, or some judges gave the first round to Nelson, which is mind-boggling to me. But anyway, what a waste of time this was for everyone involved. It ended as a draw, and yeah, just a complete and utter waste of 15 minutes. Both men are no threat in this division, and they should just both piss off, really. So record stays the same, 4-3, complete waste of time, another dud on the main card. Yeah, nothing else to say about this, really. Okay, now the third fight was between Marcin Tybura and Blagoy Ivanov. This is like two, I don't know, just look like, what can I say, 2 fat European pandas, I guess, in there. I had a hard time calling this one before the fight. I think, as I recall, I edged Tybura, but you can probably feel the confidence, I'm sure, just leaking through the microphone right now. What I did say was that both men are very durable, so I was expecting a slow-paced slog. I picked this to go the distance, with Tybura just about edging it. Now, I've noticed I often sound really bored recounting some of these fights, and I'm starting to realize why, given the shit that I'm working with at times. But I do really love the sport, I swear. Anyway, the first round was a lot of feinting and some really hypnotic jiggling by Tybura. It was really strange hip shaking in this one, a lot of feinting. Ivanov got the better shots early on. He was surprisingly a lot quicker in there, but the fight was sloppy, just as I was expecting. I felt that Ivanov had the upper hand in round 1, and as it was unfolding, even though I'd picked Tybura, I wanted him to lose, because the way he was fighting was just, yeah, embarrassing. The first was hard to call, but I gave it to Ivanov, and it seemed that Tybura's corner agreed with this assessment. Like, I really like it when corners do that. They basically said, look, you were terrible, you need to win the next 2 rounds. And to be fair, it kind of helped, because despite the fact that Blagoy looked faster in there in the start of the second, all I was thinking of, at this point was, man, Romanov is so bad. Romanov would be the guy that Tybura beat in his last fight and was 16-0 going into it. I was just thinking, how did Romanov lose to this guy? He's horrible. Anyway, Tybura smartly started to switch up the game plan and working the body, which is a strategy I really appreciate. I did call it really well that both men didn't have finishing power, and they didn't really seem to be respecting each other in that regard. They kind of were both willing to trade. This will tell you how bad the second round was. The most entertaining thing was there was a moment where I think Tybura hit Ivanov with a concurrent, like, nut shot and an eye poke at the same time. It was the weirdest double technical I've ever seen. But Tybura was clearly the busier, and he won this round pretty clearly. So I had it 1-1 going into the third. By the way, just for anyone out there listening who, I'm like, heavyweight is a horrible division. So if you're like 6'4" or over and fat, I would recommend having a go. Like, you could genuinely be a champion in the UFC with very little fighting background. Anyway, Round 3 was where the fight turned once and for all. Tybura actually showed some smart fight IQ. He took the fight to the ground, which is usually Ivanov's wheelhouse. And it wasn't the most exciting round. There was a lot of top control by Tybura. And this for me just had it, very clear. Tybura getting it by decision. Again, one judge had it 30-27 for Tybura, which I just laughed at. Stupid judging is just a thing now, but it didn't really ultimately matter. It was a unanimous decision and fairly so. But again, it just makes you wonder about these judging decisions, because I don't know how you score Tybura in the first round. That's crazy to me. And yeah, that took me to 5-3, or was it 6-4? I can't remember. It was one. I'm two fights. I think it was 5-3. So yeah. Anyway, next fight. Oh wow, this was dog shit. Now I picked Jung to win this fight, and basically I predicted that Clark was going to gas out, because he always does. So my prediction was that Clark would gas out in round 2 and that Jung would get the win. I couldn't give a fuck either way, but anyway, this was a very hard fight to watch, and this highlights why it was such a horrible choice for a co-main event. I picked Jung basically because I thought Clark was just shit, and what I didn't expect was for Jung to somehow... I mean, Clark was shit, but what I didn't expect was Jung was somehow worse. Now, Clark started out really aggressive. He moved in early. He went for a takedown, which I thought was a really strange strategy. I mean, I know Clark is a wrestler, but Jung is very, very hard to take down. So it seemed like a strange strategy. Anyway, Jung managed to get the back from this exchange, and I was just praying, let this be over quickly. My wish was not granted. The round basically ended up defined by Jung making a mistake, and he ended up on the ground after making like a very poor positional choice. And again, he was so inactive in this round, and that really set the tone. Clark edged the round, and he didn't have to really do anything to get the round. Second, again, nice takedown from Clark. A really nice takedown, actually. This was probably the best thing that happened in the fight. Nice double leg, dumped him down. There was a lot of control time against the fence. And I think Clark just had the better moments. Jung did have a few nice knees when they got up to the feet. But the problem was, you could see it in Jung's face, like Clark's cardio was holding up. And you could see he was perplexed by this. This was one of the most stupid strategies I've ever seen in a fight. Jung was clearly waiting for Clark to just run out of gas, and it just wasn't happening. And that shouldn't be a singular strategy in the fight. You need to be active. Round 3 came, and what capped off another just horrible fight was Jung got a takedown, but then fell off the top despite being 6 foot. Well, he's listed at 6'3", but he's apparently 6'4". Just got overexcited and fell off the top of Clark, who then had a bit of control time on top. There's not much else to say, really. Clark just saw out the rest of the round. It was a terrible fight. It got called as a unanimous decision, which I think was perfectly fair for Clark. But both men are shit and should be cut. Light heavyweight. These guys have no chance in that division. None. Light heavyweight is pretty horrific, but it's not as bad as heavyweight. But even still, these two, yeah, they'd get nowhere in this division, and they won't. So, yeah, this took me to 5-4. Not brilliant, but, you know. Anyway, this led then to the main event, and this one hurts a bit. Mostly because I called it exactly as I said it was going to go. I did say it was going to be a short one. I did say it was going to be a dominant win for Spivak. And there's not much to say, really. There was a moment when Spivak did a really just lovely hip toss. And if you think about how big Lewis is, that is a notable thing to be able to do. It was a really nice, just like sort of judo hip toss. Then Spivak just got on top of him and just grounded him out, beat him up. Lewis tried to get up a few times, and it's just like Spivak was just pushing him back over. It was a dominant performance. I love Derek Lewis, but he's done. He's done. There's nothing more to really say on that one. He offered nothing. Nothing. He didn't even get the opportunity to. I think he attempted to throw a couple of strikes. That was it. And that was basically the end of the fight. I think it was over in like 2 minutes. And it was mostly just Spivak taking him down, beating him up. It was so easy for Spivak in there, who does have, you know, he has losses against terrible guys in the division, you know, and not some very good wins. So, but he has looked very good in his last 3. He called for a top 5 opponent, which maybe not be the smartest thing. I think, like, I mean, he has to, you know, he has to at some point anyway, but heavyweight is very top heavy. You know, the top 5 are very, very good, and below that is just trash. And I think Spivak is going to find himself at the best of the trash heap. You know, I think maybe a fight against, I think he fought, what's that? Oh, Tybura. I think he's fought him before. That rematch might not be a bad idea, given where they both are in the division. But nah, very disappointing end for Lewis. I'd be surprised if we probably will see him again. And he won't get cut because he's Derek Lewis and he's got the most knockouts in UFC history. They won't do him like that. But this was horrible to watch if you're a Lewis fan. He looked like he didn't belong in there anymore. Given the fact that I knew very little about the card going into it and had to do a bit of research, which is usually not the case for me. I usually know a lot about the fighters. I'd take that. 6-4 is not bad, and it keeps me on a winning record. There was a lit women's fight that was mercifully cancelled. Alright, so this brings us to the end of this. We'll be giving my prediction to the upcoming pay-per-view card between Makhachev and Volkanovski. I'll probably be releasing it on Tuesday at this stage, so look out for that. And yeah, thanks very much for sticking with me today, and hope you got some enjoyment out of the card. It wasn't the best, but you know, sometimes that's just the way it goes. By the way, that does take me to an overall record of 22-11. I did forget to mention that, which is pretty good. It's like 66%, I think, something like that. I'm pretty happy with that. That's above the average. Anyway, thanks again, guys, and see you again.